Welcome to another audio lecture. It's going to be a lecture and reading. I'm going to be reading Contents of the Dead Man's Pocket. You can follow along with me if you have access to a textbook from pages 118 to page 134. So, if you start on page 117, we get a little background information. The author is Jack Finney, born in 1911, and he passed away in 1995. There in blue it reads, while working at an advertising agency, Jack Finney dreamed of becoming a writer. He realized his dream when he entered his first short story in a contest sponsored by a magazine and won. Tales of Time. Finney became especially well known for blending realistic and imaginary details into tales of time travel. In his popular works, the hero often escapes from the present into a simpler and calmer time in the past. However, Finney was happy to live in the present. There's no past time I'd like to stay in, he said. I want to stay here permanently. So information under background for the story, and this is something that you might want to go back to and refer to when you are filling out some questions in your student activity workbook. So it reads, before computers. In the 1950s, when this story takes place, there were no computers or photocopiers. To make copies, people used carbon paper, black coated sheets that transferred written or typed marks onto blank paper below. Without a carbon copy, a lost document might be gone forever, a possibility the main character in this story dreads. Okay, so that is the intro to the story. So you're just going to continue to follow along with me. I don't have any other slides for this story or any other pictures. We will be continuing to talk about this story in classes in the next couple of weeks. So on page 118, we see the title there again, Contents of the Dead Man's Pocket. So again, reading is thinking, so there's lots of activity going on in your brain, even just by looking at the picture and the title. And so maybe you can make some predictions based on the title or based on the picture, or even on the little clue that was given to us about a document that might be gone forever. So it begins. At the little living room desk, Tom Beneke rolled 2 sheets of flimsy and a heavier top sheet, carbon paper sandwiched between them, into his portable. Inner office memo, the top sheet was headed, and he typed tomorrow's date just below this. Then he glanced at a creased yellow sheet, covered with his own handwriting, beside the typewriter. Hot in here, he muttered to himself. Then, from the short hallway at his back, he heard the muffled clang of wire coat hangers in the bedroom closet. And at this reminder of what his wife was doing, he thought, hot? No, guilty conscience. So I'm going to pause here, and I may make a couple of additional comments in my reading. So it sounds like he hears some commotion in the other room, which was his wife getting ready. So possibly it wasn't that it was hot based on temperature, but maybe he's feeling a little guilty about something. Let's read on. He got up, shoving his hands into the back pockets of his gray wash slacks, stepped to the living room window beside the desk, and stood breathing on the glass, watching the expanding circle of mist staring down through the autumn night at Lexington Avenue, 11 stories below. So hopefully you're visualizing this, even giving an idea of how high up he is in a building. He was a tall, lean, dark-haired young man in a pullover sweater who looked as though he had played not football, probably, but basketball in college. Now he placed the hills of his hands against the top edge of the lower window frame and shoved upward. But as usual, the window didn't budge, and he had to lower his hands and then shoot them hard upward to jolt the window open a few inches. He dusted his hands, muttering. But still he didn't begin his work. He crossed the room to the hallway entrance and, leaning against the door jamb, hands shoved into his back pockets again, he called, Claire? When his wife answered, he said, Sure you don't mind going alone? No. Her voice was muffled, and he knew her head and shoulders were in the bedroom closet. Then the tap of her high heels sounded on the wood floor, and she appeared at the end of the little hallway. Wearing a slip, both hands raised to one ear, clipping on an earring, she smiled at him, a slender, very pretty girl with light brown, almost blonde hair, her prettiness emphasized by the pleasant nature that showed in her face. It's just that I hate you to miss this movie. You wanted to see it too. Okay, so a little dialogue between Tom and his wife, Claire. Yeah, I know. He ran his fingers through his hair. Got to get this done, though. She nodded, accepting this. Then, glancing at the desk across the living room, she said, You work too much, though, Tom, and too hard. He smiled. You won't mind, though, will you, when the money comes rolling in and I'm known as the boy wizard of wholesale groceries? I guess not. She smiled and turned back toward the bedroom. At his desk again, Tom lighted a cigarette. Then a few moments later, as Claire appeared, dressed and ready to leave, he set it on the rim of the ashtray. Just after 7, she said, I can make the beginning of the first feature. So on page 119, there's a question there under literary analysis, under conflict. It says, what internal conflict of Tom's does this paragraph show? Okay, so if we are in class listening to this, we can pause the reading and we can discuss this in small groups. Returning to the reading on page 120. He walked to the front door closet to help her on with her coat. He kissed her then and, for an instant, holding her close, smelling the perfume she had used. He was tempted to go with her. It was not actually true that he had to work tonight, though he very much wanted to. This was his own project, unannounced as yet in his office, and it could be postponed. But then they wouldn't see it till Monday, he thought once again, and if I give it to the boss tomorrow, he might read it over the weekend. Have a good time, he said aloud. He gave his wife a little swat and opened the door for her. Filling the air from the building hallway, smelling faintly of floor wax, streamed gently past his face. We can see the author here uses lots of descriptive language so that way we can really visualize the scene where the story takes place. He watched her walk down the hall, flicked a hand in response as she waved, and then he started to close the door, but it resisted for a moment. As the door opening narrowed, the current of warm air from the hallway, channeled through this smaller opening now, suddenly rushed past him with accelerated force. Behind him, he heard the slap of the window curtains against the wall and the sound of paper fluttering from his desk, and he had to push to close the door. Turning, he saw a sheet of white paper drifting to the floor in a series of arcs, and another sheet, yellow, moving toward the window, caught in the dying current flowing through the narrow opening. As he watched, the paper struck the bottom edge of the window and hung there for an instant, plastered against the glass and wood. Then, as the moving air stilled completely, the current swinging back from the wall to hang free again, he saw the yellow sheet drop to the window ledge and slid down out of sight. Okay, so this is the big issue here. On page 120, reading skill, cause and effect. Which key details explain why the paper floats off the desk? Again, this is appropriate time to pause and address that question. Continuing with the reading, he ran across the room, grasped the bottom edge of the window, and tugged. Staring through the glass, he saw the yellow sheet, dimly now in the darkness outside, lying on the ornamental ledge a yard below the window. Even as he watched, it was moving, scraping slowly along the ledge, pushed by the breeze that pressed steadily against the building wall. He heaved on the window with all his strength, and it shot open with a bang, the window weight rattling in the casing. But the paper was past his reach, and leaning out into the night, He watched it scud steadily along the ledge to the south, half plastered against the building wall. Above the muffled sound of the street traffic far below, he could hear the dry scrape of its movement, like a leaf on the pavement. The living room of the next apartment to the south projected a yard or more further out toward the street than this one. Because of this, the Benekeys paid $7.50 less rent than their neighbors. And now the yellow sheet, sliding along the stone ledge, nearly invisible in the night, was stopped by the projecting blank wall of the next apartment. It lay motionless. Then in the corner formed by the two walls, a good 5 yards away, pressed firmly against the ornate corner ornament of the ledge by the breeze that moved past Tom Benekey's face. Literary analysis, conflict. It says, explain how an external conflict here helps create suspense. So you can refer back to the definition of what external conflict means and also what suspense means. Continuing, he knelt at the window and stared at the yellow paper for a full minute or more, waiting for it to move, to slide off the ledge and fall, hoping he could follow its course to the street and then hurry down in the elevator and retrieve it. But it didn't move. And then he saw that the paper was caught firmly between a projection of the convoluted corner ornament and the ledge. So convoluted, that's one of our vocabulary words, which means twisted in a complicated way. He thought about the poker from the fireplace, then the broom, then the mop, discarding each thought as it occurred to him. There was nothing in the apartment long enough to reach that paper. It was hard for him to understand that he actually had to abandon it. It was ridiculous, and he began to curse. Of all the papers on his desk, why did it have to be this one in particular? On 4 long Saturday afternoons, he had stood in supermarkets counting the people who passed certain displays, and the results were scribbled on that yellow sheet. From stacks of trade publications gone over page by page and snatched half hours at work and during evenings at home, he had copied facts, quotations, and figures into that sheet. And he had carried it with him to the public library on Fifth Avenue, where he'd spent a dozen lunch hours and early evenings adding more. All were needed to support and lend authority to his idea for a new grocery store display method. Without them, his idea was a mere opinion. And there they all lay, in his own impoverished shorthand, countless hours of work out there on the ledge. For many seconds he believed he was going to abandon the yellow sheet, that there was nothing else to do. The work could be duplicated, but it would take 2 months, and the time to present this idea was now, for use in the spring displays. He struck his fist on the window's ledge. Then he shrugged. Even if his plan were adopted, he told himself, it wouldn't bring him a raise in pay, not immediately anyway. Or as a direct result, it wouldn't bring me a promotion either, he argued. Not of itself. Okay, so the reading skill here on the left says cause and effect. What might cause Tom to go after the paper? So we can think about this, discuss it with a neighbor, with a group, or as a class. I will read one more paragraph, and then that will be the reading for this audio. But just the same, and he couldn't escape the thought, this and other independent projects, some already done and others planned for the future, would gradually mark him out from the score of other young men in his company. They were the way to change from a name on the payroll to a name in the minds of the company officials. They were the beginning of the long, long climb to where he was determined to be, at the very top. And he knew he was going out there in the darkness, after the yellow sheet 15 feet beyond his reach. So for continual audio reading, you can check out the next video. Thank you.